Hi everyone, welcome to Mrs. Collison's 4th grade YouTube channel. Today we are reading the 4th grade Fuss by Johanna Hurwitz. We might have a couple of guests running through our YouTube channel today. One happens to be my daughter Lillian, who also is helping me video record today, and our dog Henry. So they say hello as well. Alright, let's begin this wonderful book tonight. Welcome to 4th grade. Julio Sanchez was really glad to be in the same 4th grade class as his pal Lucas Cott. Lucas was very smart and he was also very funny. It was impossible to sit in a classroom with Lucas and not double over with laughter at least once, or maybe even twice a day. Lucas always did or said something really crazy. As far as Julio was concerned, being in the same class as Lucas was funnier than any comedy program on TV. One morning, soon after the new school year began, Lucas realized he'd forgotten to do his homework. Instead of just admitting it and promising to be better prepared in the future, Lucas put on a whole show for the class. He fell on the floor with a loud clatter. "I bumped my head," he moaned as he stood up. "Where am I? I think I have a concussion." He paused for a moment. "I also have amnesia." "I doubt it," said their teacher, Mrs. Schrellenberg. "Get in your seat and take out your homework," she told him. Lucas looked around. Which seat is mine?" he asked one of the girls who was sitting nearby. Everyone started laughing because they knew Lucas was just pretending, and Julio watched his friend with amazement. He didn't know how Lucas managed to keep a straight face. Lucas would probably make a great actor when he grew up. He was a really great actor already. Mrs. Schrellenberg came over and took Lucas by the arm. She moved him toward his seat. "Does it look familiar?" she asked him. "Where am I?" Lucas looked again. "Is this a school?" "Not only is this a school," Mrs. Schrellenberg told him, "but if you don't sit in your seat and behave, I'm afraid I'll have to send you down to the principal's office." "To Mr. Hurwitz?" asked Lucas, forgetting that he had amnesia. "The very one," said the teacher. No one wanted to be sent to the principal's office, not even Lucas. But for the rest of the morning, Julio grinned whenever he thought of his friend, pretending not to know where he was. On the following Saturday, Julio went with Lucas to see a World War II film at the local movie house. When the picture was over and they left the theater, Lucas spoke with a phony German accent as the boys walked home. It sounded hilarious to Julio, but it was even funnier when Lucas answered questions in his newly acquired German accent on Monday morning at school. At first, Mrs. Schrellenberg tried to ignore Lucas's behavior, but finally she said to him, "Lucas, did you have Sauerbraten for dinner last night?" "Wann ist das? Sauerbraten?" Lucas asked in his imitation German voice. "That is what you'll find out and write a report on for tomorrow," the teacher responded. To help him, she wrote the word on the chalkboard. And so on Tuesday, Lucas came to school with an extra homework assignment. Cricket Kaufman was in their class too. Julio had been in classes with Cricket since he moved to town when he was in 2nd grade. Cricket was perfect, which was bad enough, but to make matters worse, Cricket knew she was perfect and showed off a lot. When Lucas got the extra Sauerbraten assignment, Cricket brought in a recipe for the dish the next day. That's how everyone in the class learned that it was a traditional German meal, sort of like pot roast. Only according to Cricket's recipe, the gravy was made of sour cream and ground as ginger snap cookies. It sounded odd and made everyone laugh, but Julio would have been willing to try it if it was ever served for lunch in the school cafeteria. Anyhow, it was just like Cricket to do Lucas's homework and to do it better than he did. Still, now that they were in 4th grade, both Lucas and Cricket began to change. Lucas clowned around a bit less, and Cricket began to act differently too. She gradually seemed more like a human being and not a perfectly programmed robot student who did everything better than everyone else. Julio liked Mrs. Schrellenberg, his fourth grade teacher. The name was a mouthful and the spelling was worse. There was a school rumor that only the brightest students were put into Mrs. Schrellenberg's class each year. Who else would be able to say and spell that different name? So when Julio had first discovered that he was in her section of fourth grade, he worried that a mistake had been made. No one would ever say that Julio was one of the smartest students in his grade. Everyone knew that this was the year that all the students took the statewide standardized tests in math and language skills. When they were younger, fourth grade seemed so far away. Julio and his friends had tiptoed past the fourth grade classrooms each spring and looked in awe at the signs posted on the doors. Quiet, please. Test in progress. And they had felt a great relief that they were not sitting behind those closed doors, chewing on pencils while they racked their brains for the correct answers. Once during the summer between third and fourth grade, when Lucas and Julio were playing together, Lucas had mentioned the forthcoming tests. My mom says not to worry about them, Lucas had told his friend. She says, I'll do just fine. Julio's mom never talked about the tests at all. She probably didn't know they existed. When Julio's older brothers, Ramon and Nelson, were in fourth grade, the family hadn't lived in the community, not even in the state. Nowadays, Mrs. Sanchez was head chambermaid at Sycamore Shade Motor Inn. Even though she had to work hard doing her own duties and supervising the other chambermaids, it was the best paying job she'd ever had, so she was very pleased. Since Julio's father was no longer alive, his mother had to support the family. Mrs. Sanchez left the house early in the morning and came home in time for supper. By then, she'd be exhausted. Sometimes Julio's grandmother, who lived with them, prepared the evening meal. His grandmother spoke Spanish and didn't know more than a dozen words of English, but she was a pretty good cook. Other days, if their grandmother's arthritis was acting up, Julio, Ramon, and Nelson put the meal together. Nothing special. Hamburgers or a pot of spaghetti with sauce out of a jar, or some other easy-to-prepare thing. Mrs. Sanchez always asked her sons about school, but she'd been born in Puerto Rico and didn't always understand all the things that were going on here. So Julio had never discussed the standardized test for fourth graders with her. Besides, it was still a long way off until April. He wasn't going to think about it now. Before many days of the new school year had passed, Cricket gathered her classmates around her. I was talking to Nancy Ross, who's in Mrs. Lenton's class. She says they're busy doing work to get ready for the big test, but we haven't done anything at all yet. Do you realize we won't be prepared? She said with alarm. Hey, Cricket, you're so smart. You could take the test this afternoon and you'd do great. Julio told her. Do you really think so? Asked Cricket, beaming at her classmate. Yep. Well, I still think we should be doing practice tests and things like the other fourth graders. You can't be too prepared for the big test. Besides, I want to score in the top percentile. Julio didn't even know what that meant. If you want to be prepared, join the Boy Scouts, Lucas said. That's their motto, be prepared. Very funny, said Cricket, scowling at Lucas. Anyhow, I'm glad we're not talking about those tests in our class. I don't want to think about them, said Lucas. That's the way Julio felt too. He just wished that his head was as smart as Cricket's and Lucas's. But there was no fooling himself. He might be in Mrs. Schrellenberg's class. He had even learned how to spell her name. But he didn't know how he'd manage the test. And he didn't know what would happen if he really goofed up. He shuddered just thinking about it. Someone just walked over your grave, Cricket told him. What are you talking about? Julio asked her. I saw you give a shiver. That's what my great aunt always says if she shivers. Someone walked over her grave. You're crazy, said Julio, but secretly he had something else to worry about. Would these tests be the end of him? Could you die from taking the big test? That's the end of chapter 1 tonight. Tomorrow night, come visit me again, and the next chapter is going to be chapter 2, test, test, test. Until then, be safe, and we'll see you again.